The US government has been waging a war for over a century. Civilians have even joined the fight. The blood-stained battlefield is right here on US soil. And most people aren't even aware that the fight rages on, even when it's in their own backyards. And somehow, we're still losing. The enemy? The Coyote. No, wait, not that one. Hold on. Oh, wait. Okay. The Coyote. Hi, I'm Candi. I collect bones, bullets, and bad decisions from history, and welcome to my cabinet of curiosities. Today, we're talking about the ubiquitous bane of all farmers and ranchers' existence, whether you call it Coyote or Coyote. I'll just call it Coyote. How about that? Trying to keep livestock alive and thriving is serious business. Even if they aren't killed and eaten, if anything stresses them out, their production decreases. Less milk, eggs, beef, and the business suffers. And coyotes are a major perpetrator. Predators are responsible for an estimated 300,000 livestock deaths annually and injure more. Just for the year 2019 alone, they caused an estimated $232 million in losses. Coyotes are responsible for over half of the reported losses. They usually go after lambs, goats, calves, and poultry, and stress the hell out of adult livestock and the farmers.
Dagnabbit! We'll never get rid of them!
Before you think it's just a livestock and farmer problem, it's also becoming an everyone problem. The more accustomed coyotes get to humans, the more they venture into our own backyards. Like many predators, they pick the weak and vulnerable as their main prey. Cats, Shih Tzus, Chihuahuas, basically anything you could carry in a Prada bag and use as an emotional support animal. But they've also been occasionally known to target people, especially children.
Dad,
Yeah.
this is a coyote.
No.
Yeah.
Oh! Holy!
And if you know me, you'd understand how I feel about predators who attack children. We don't do catch and release. This kind of situation with the coyote has always been a problem. Wherever there's livestock, there's a predator to be guarded against. And because the coyote is so pervasive, that's the one that the crosshairs have settled on for decades. The solution?
I'm going to kill them all, sir.
Mark Twain described them in his book, Roughing It. Check it out. The coyote is a long, slim, sick, and sorry-looking skeleton with a gray wolf skin stretched over it, a tolerably bushy tail that forever sags down with a despairing expression of forsakenness and misery, a furtive and evil eye, and a long, sharp face with slightly lifted lip and exposed teeth. He has a general slinking expression all over. The coyote is a living, breathing allegory of want. He is always hungry. He is always poor, out of luck, and friendless. The meanest creatures despise him, and even the fleas would desert him for a velocipede. He is so spiritless and cowardly that even while his exposed teeth are pretending a threat, the rest of his face is apologizing for it. And he is so homely, so scrawny and ribby and coarse-haired and pitiful. That's kind of brutal, man. Well, not so much as described them as much as character assassinated them. Pretty harsh, dude. To be fair, Mark Twain wasn't exactly known for his optimism.
The only earthly certainty is oblivion.
Before the government became involved in the war, people were putting bounties on coyotes. In order to receive payment, you needed to bring back proof, like hides or ears. Nothing says honest accounting system like a bag of coyote chunks. And they didn't care how the job was done. Shooting, trapping, snaring, poisoning. They just had to go. At the same time, other predators are being targeted too. Bears, mountain lions, wolves. While it seemed like a good idea at the time, this actually ended up helping the coyotes instead. More on that later. Then in the late 1800s, early 1900s, the government was like, ooh, we killing stuff?
You son of a... I'm in!
In 1915, USDA's Bureau of Biological Survey, now Wildlife Services, created the Division of Predator and Rodent Control. Then they beefed up their efforts with an Animal Damage Control Act of 1931, which basically gave the government free rein in how to curtail certain animals that damage things like agriculture, livestock, property, forests, and public health. Between the government and ranchers, the coyotes didn't stand a chance. Starting in the 1920s, the use of aerial gunning was a popular method of attack.
Get some, baby!
It died out for a short period of time during World War II because the pilots, aircraft, and ammo were all being used somewhere else. But once the fighting was finished overseas, the war in the US can continue in full swing, especially after 1972, when Nixon signed an executive order banning the use of chemical warfare on coyotes on federal lands. Oh yeah, chemical warfare. It wasn't enough to trap, bait, snare, and shoot them. They basically saw how well mustard gas worked in the First World War and figured, yeah, coyotes don't know how to use gas masks. How else would they get a tight seal around their snoots? I mean, I guess they did have gas masks for dogs, but they still need help putting them on. Those idiots don't have thumbs. So one method was using gas cartridges and go denning. Denning is what they called it when they found coyotes in a den and raided it like a SWAT team. They tossed in a gas cartridge containing sodium nitrate and charcoal, seal up the entrance, and let the carbon monoxide do its thing. In the 1850s, strychnine was the go-to method, and it was cheap, effective, and available at almost any trading post. Strychnine is a neurotoxin primarily used as a pesticide. Fun side note, it was also used back in the day for medicinal purposes. It helps to contract the muscles, so it was used in small quantities for paralysis and eye issues, and even as a performance-enhancing drug. They would mix it in with brandy or cocaine to produce a stimulant effect that gave the athlete an edge. I can't stress to you enough, don't do that. Don't do that. Look, don't go strychnine maxing or whatever it is you kids do. Look, I probably shouldn't have to say this, but it's 2026 and people are doing way too many weird things. So I feel like I kind of have to say it. Don't use strychnine as a stimulant. You will end up like this guy. Okay? Okay. Love you.
Okay, yep, love you too.
They weren't using it on the coyotes to win races. They'd bait them by lacing the carcasses of dead animals, wait for the coyotes to feast, and then wait a little bit longer for them to die. And it's a brutal way to go. Another method was sodium cyanide, using a special device called a coyote getter. It was a metal tube staked into the ground, loaded with cyanide, and a blank .38 cartridge like a mini shotgun, and then a tasty little morsel on top. The coyote would approach the bait.
Ooh, piece of candy.
And then, boom, a shot of cyanide straight to the mouth. The problem was too many people were accidentally getting shot with the buried cyanide guns. Imagine that. So they made a similar device called the M44. And this one was spring-loaded, so it was doing more of a boing than a boom. Kind of like a little jack-in-the-box of doom. Now, the last method I'll talk about is called Compound 1080. It's an odorless and tasteless synthesized death juice originally found in poisonous plants, which uses it as their natural defense against predators. Scientists thought that sounded like a good idea, so they isolated the compound and used it against their own predators. Known as one of the most deadly poisons on Earth, it's especially lethal to canids. From the 1940s to the 70s, the feds laced bait with the juice and systematically killed untold numbers of yotes. Untold because the poison often took several hours to kick in to full effect, long after the coyote had skedaddled, making it hard for them to really know how many died. The problem was that these toxic bait stations were indiscriminate in their death dealing. If you sprinkle tasty morsels out in the woods, there's no telling what'll start chowing down.
Ooh, piece of candy.
Eagles, bears, badgers, wolves, other dogs, all were casualties in the war against the coyote. So in 1985, they decided to get a little bit more strategic with Compound 1080. Calamity collars. They're actually called livestock protection collars, but I like my name better. Worn around the neck of a sheep or goat, these necklaces of death are fashioned with little rubber bladders filled with a compound, which then gets released into the mouth of the coyote when it goes for the classic throat bite. It's like gushers, but way more macabre.
Ew! That doesn't taste like a gusher!
Just because it goos doesn't mean it's gush.
So with all these methods of destruction lobbed against the enemy, plus way more that I haven't even touched on, over the course of over a century, the coyote's surely been completely wiped from the face of the continental United States, right?
You serious?
The government's experimentation efforts were pretty successful against other predators. Wolves, bears, mountain lions, damn near to extinction, in fact. But the coyotes? Not only did they not die out, they thrived. Once the dominant predators in one area were thinned out, coyotes moved in and now had very little pressure, outside of humans, to rapidly expand their territory and population. It was like the government took out the bouncers and security at a club, and now there's no one to stop all the riffraff from coming in and taking over the whole place. They're essentially the methy squatters who found blocks of houses vacant and abandoned, ready for squatting.
Don't mind if I do.
They also figured out how to live around people. Whether you moved into their neighborhood or they moved into yours, it didn't matter. They'll eat just about anything. Berries, bugs, rats, roadkill, pets, leftovers, and the people provide. They'll dip, dodge, duck around people, snatch your cat, dumpster dive, and hide on the outskirts. It's practically a game for them, and they're really good at it. But their most impressive trick for staying alive and thriving? Turning persecution into a population boom. The more pressure put on coyotes, the more they compensate with reproduction. They can tell by the nightly howls that there aren't many other coyotes around, and they'll go from having about 5 pups to double or triple that.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Coyotes usually mate for life. Aww. And have one dominant breeding pair. But if the alpha pair dies, guess what? They're replaced with all the rest of the females. On top of all that, the females will start breeding younger and younger. The harder the government worked to kill the coyotes, the more coyotes we ended up getting. Even though the coyote is kicking our butts, the war isn't over yet. Wildlife services are still racking up bodies. The majority of the US states have year-round open season hunting, and people who own livestock are doing everything in their power to curtail the coyote, including non-lethal methods. Guard dogs, fencing, audio gadgets, and doodads set up as deterrents. It's expensive, exhausting, and endless work. At this point, it's not even about trying to wipe out the enemy. It's about trying to figure out the best way to live with them in our midst, encouraging them to eat literally anything else but the livestock or our pets, and just keep our respective distance. And hopefully no one makes a silly mistake of thinking that they could be friends with a wild animal.
Can I keep you?
We spent thousands of years domesticating dogs, morphing them into all different kinds of shapes and sizes and varying levels of being able to breathe, some of which are, frankly, concerning. We breed them with careful and considerate precision until they have a genetic predisposition of being a human companion. They basically mentally stay a puppy for their entire lives. They're friendly, they read facial cues and gestures, they're the best of the best, the cream of the crop, and the snuggliest and bestest boys and girls ever.
I will name him George, and I will hug him and pet him and squeeze him.
That being said, coyotes are not dogs. They're not friendly. They don't seek human approval or affection. They don't want cuddles. Technically, neither does my dog, but she doesn't, bite me about it. But that hasn't stopped people from trying. In the war against the coyote, some individuals opted to lend aid and comfort to the enemy. Several people over the years have tried to raise coyotes from puphood. They could manage to tame them a little bit, especially when they were younger and totally dependent on the person as their caretaker. But the second they hit puberty, the rebellious teen angst comes out in full force. Instead of getting piercings and having mood swings, they get territorial and try to literally kill you or anyone that they feel is a threat to them or their food supply. The only instance of someone raising and keeping a coyote from pup to old age is when Shreve Stockton rescued Charlie. She has a blog and a book out called The Daily Coyote, where she documents the interactions that she had with this coyote that wasn't necessarily her pet, but an animal that she coexisted with for many years. And then there was this one time where a coyote went on 5 bombing runs in World War II. There was this guy from Washington by the name of Lieutenant William Crump, also known as Wild Bill, who graduated high school early just so he could enlist in the U.S. Army Air Force. When he was eventually sent to Texas to complete his flight training in 1944, he found a 2-week-old coyote pup. So he did what anyone nicknamed Wild Bill would do and kept it and named it Jeep, after the mystical 4-dimensional dog-like creature from the Popeye cartoon. When he headed to Baton Rouge for training, he took Jeep with him, and then let the coyote fly with him to get him used to the routine. Not sure how accustomed a coyote was with flying, but apparently it went well enough. Then it was off to England, but not without Jeep. Bill scrapped his gas mask and smuggled Jeep onto the ship in the empty gas mask case. He was able to get dog tags for Jeep, a Form 5 logbook, and immunization records. According to Bill, Jeep was potty trained and basically domesticated. They slept together, trained together, and eventually went on combat missions together. There was even one mission where Jeep saved both of their lives. While the coyote usually slept on the floor of the cockpit, there was one instance where he snapped awake and started barking. It freaked Bill out, but instead of panicking, Bill responded with evasive maneuvers because, as it turned out, there was anti-aircraft fire aimed directly for them from somewhere on the ground below. Jeep's warning and Bill's maneuvers ended up saving both of them. Unfortunately, Jeep's story doesn't really have a happy ending.
You're like a constant downer, huh?
Sorry. Jeep couldn't handle higher altitude plane rides, so one day he stayed behind while Bill went on another combat mission. The kids in a nearby town came to take Jeep for a walk and to play. When it started raining, they tied Jeep to a tree and ran indoors. I wouldn't have done that. I would have taken him with me. He wasn't really into that, so he broke free and started on his way back to Playford Hall, where Bill was stationed. And that's when tragedy struck. While on his homeward bound journey, a military vehicle hit him and he passed away. He was buried on the grounds with full honors, and his plaque is still there to this day. Jeep was only 5 months old when he passed, and I think that plays a huge part in why he was so well-mannered. When a male coyote reaches maturity, which is about 9 to 12 months old, that's when they start showing more aggressive and territorial behavior. So maybe it was a blessing that he passed so young? I know that sounds kind of like a cope, but hear me out. This way Bill at least didn't have to remember his little buddy as a crazed wild animal, but rather as a loyal companion and a brave co-pilot. So, what did we learn? For one, coyotes are the ultimate tricksters and survivalists. Even after a century plus of bombs, bullets, poisons, and presidential executive orders, we just ended up spending billions turning coyotes into America's most resilient squatters.
They're gonna need to send in the National Guard or fucking SWAT team, because I ain't going nowhere!
While we nearly wiped out wolves and lions, coyotes just saw a huge vacancy sign and boomed their numbers threefold since the 80s for a crash. They made larger litters and urban homes in Chicago sandwich shops. Even killing 70% of them barely made a dent. They just breed like over-caffeinated rabbits. And in those moments where we do love them, we eventually wind up with a realization that they don't really ever belong to us. We can't beat them and we can't join them. At this point, the coyote war isn't about winning. We can still try our best to keep them from eating our animals and stressing out the cows, but we should also give respect to where it's due, to the wiliest underdog ever. That's it from the cabinet. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more of my content, please press the like and subscribe buttons. And as always, stay weird and tell your dog I said hi!